Okay, in this video we'll be going over the EOSIO equivalent of a Hello World smart contract. I think we can just jump right into it. So if you pull down the EOS code, as we did in the previous video, and go into the contracts directory, you'll see inside hello there are these files. If we vim the hello.cpp file, you can see this is the Hello World smart contract as they've given to you in the documentation. These other files are the Ricardian clauses, as you'll see down here at the bottom. Ricardian contract. So what makes EOS unique is that they expect you to have this Ricardian contract along with your smart contract, which states the intent of your code. So that way, if like some sort of bug happens, the community can prove that it is in fact a bug. Essentially what they're trying to do is kind of shy away from this code is law kind of concept that the Ethereum community has. So this allows for different things like, again, if you have bugs or your code's doing something malicious, you can be prosecuted in a local court of law. So that kind of stuff. You'll see that here in the hello rc.md. This is your Ricardian contract for the hello contract, and you'll see the other one for the high RC for the high action handler that's actually inside the smart contract. So one thing I kind of wanted to do is actually get out of this directory to show you that you can. So if I go into this smart contracts directory that I created for this video, I think standard practice is typically that you do your development inside of the contracts, the EOS contracts directory. So like in the OCI video, as I mentioned before, Kevin gave, he actually writes his contracts inside this directory. So he would make a new directory, call it Hello World, I guess. And then actually just do the development in there, create a CPP file, the Ricardian file, all that stuff. But I wanted to prove to you that you can actually do that from anywhere, or create the smart contract from anywhere. So let's go into this contracts directory, the hello directory that I created, and you can see all I have is this simple hello file, or hello.cpp file. So if we open that, we can start diving into this smart contract. So first we do an include of the EOSIO lib / EOSIO.hpp. We're already familiar with how to import in C++. That's all they're doing here, and that gives them access to different things like this scoped contract thing here. This account name is also part of the EOSIO lib. Require auth is another one. Let's comment that out for now. So basic. This is essentially the EOSIO lib that you're getting here by including it. We've talked about namespacing here, where they're just using namespace EOSIO, so they don't have to do things like, in this case, they don't have to scope, as I talked about in that video, like that. That's all that's doing. So here, this is essentially the meat of the smart contract. This class hello. And what they're doing is they're inheriting publicly from the EOSIO contract parent class, if you want to call it that. I'm actually would be interested in doing a deep dive as to why that is specifically. I'm sure they have a reason for that, and there's something to do with compilation and runtime deploying, all that stuff. But this is straight from the docs, so sometimes you just follow it as a rule of thumb so that things will work. Here we're defining everything under this is public, and then we're using the contract namespace as well. Again, I'm not entirely sure why we're doing that. I'd be interested in deep diving that, but I just know it works, so I don't question it. Okay, so this is the actual, real, smart contract, if you want to call it that. It's really just one method. It's not that big of a deal, but as I showed you in the token smart contract, we have an action here, and this action is called high, and it takes a parameter as an account name, and that account name we're calling it as user. One thing I kind of wanted to point out is down here. So the way we used to do smart contract development before mainnet was launched is you would define an action handler kind of function, and in that action handler function it would take the scope, in this case it would be hello, and ensure that the function being, or sorry, the action I guess being passed to this hello function, or this hello action handler, was in fact, you know, from hello, and then you would define an action on the action itself, like, so you would do like an, you know, something like if action equals high, then you would run the high function, right? So you would just have a bunch of these if statements nested one against the other for every action that you wanted to support in your smart contract. Well, this EOSIO lib macro, or sorry, this EOSIO underscore ABI macro takes care of doing all that for you in order to really clean up the smart contract code. So now all you have to do is say, hey, I have this contract, it's called hello, and in it I want an action high. I could add an action here bye as well if I wanted to, and just define it like this, right? So it makes the writing smart contracts more succinct. This macro, that's really all it does. For now, you know, let's keep it simple. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, and let's just run the high action. As we've seen, actually, when I did the name constructor video back in Intro to C++, this should actually look very similar, because I kind of just lifted the Hello World smart contract and then toyed around with the parameters. One more thing I wanted to point out to you is this, I don't know what you call it. In Java, I'd call them an annotation. I'm not sure C++ people would be offended by that. But we have this triple comment and then the annotation ABI action. And what this is doing is generating the ABI file for you. If you're an Ethereum developer coming from Ethereum, you kind of already know what an ABI is. But essentially what it is it's telling everyone who's going to use your smart contract essentially like the interface that they need to know. So the methods that you support, the parameters you support, all these other things. So when your contract gets uploaded, it's essentially binary. So everyone needs a way of like deserializing that binary and actually interacting with it. So with that, you upload an ABI with the smart contract at the same time. This annotation actually takes care of generating the ABI for you. After I compile this smart contract, I'll actually show you the ABI that gets spit out for you. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So let's actually compile this. One thing I wanted to call out is, so NS James is a fairly well-known EOS developer in the community. He did a couple of videos before the mainnet launch, similar to what I was doing, but obviously his were way more geared to EOS development. I kind of held off because I knew the syntax was going to change. But in the video, he writes this little script, and I just wanted to point it out to you because I think it's actually really useful. He calls it contract, and essentially what this does is, so if we look back at the documentation, after you write your Hello World smart contract, you have to run these series of commands. This EOSIO, here you're generating the WAST file, and then from here you're generating the ABI file that we talked about before you can finally set the contract down here. So it's like 3 steps that you're going to do, kind of over and over again every time you want to write smart contracts. So he basically just took these and put them into a script, so you don't need to keep running these over and over and over again. You can just run contract and you're done. So we're going to use that script right here to compile the hello. Whoops. And this shouldn't work, and I'll explain to you why. Well, I wasn't expecting that to be the reason why, but we'll go with it. Okay, after we get Node.EOS spun up, it still shouldn't work, and I'll show you why, because I want you to see, all of the problems that you might run into while you're coding. So hopefully you'll see this and go, oh yeah, I remember, he had the same issue I did. So now if we try and contract this again, you can see from the output of the script, it's generating the ABI for you, creating the WASM, and then trying to upload it to the to the blockchain. Okay, so here it's saying you don't have the keys related to this. So if we do, well, first let's do Kleos wallet unlock, and the wallet should already be unlocked, I believe, but let's just make sure. Okay, so it is. So the reason why we're unable to deploy this smart contract is we don't actually have permissions to the Hello account, and that's what it's complaining about here. It's saying, hey, it doesn't specifically tell you, what's going on. It just says, hey, maybe private keys aren't correct. Hey, it doesn't explicitly say, you're missing permissions for the Hello account. So what we need to do is we need to create that account. And that executed successfully. So now we actually do have that Hello account, and we have permissions to it. Again, all those things I talked about before. We've imported the public key, and now we can map that public key to this account name. So henceforth, that public-private key pair can now be attributed directly to the Hello name, and we don't need to do anything else, which is, again, one of the great things about EOS. So now, if we try and deploy this contract, it should work, and we can play around with it a little bit. Okay, again, as I said in a previous video, once you see the set code and the set ABI, your contract successfully was uploaded to the blockchain. So now, as usual, we can push actions to it. And again, all we have defined here is the high action. So if we try to execute any other actions, it's going to fail. Let's give it a, I don't know, Dan. And I don't know, recently this would pass. It's only been recently that I pulled down the latest code, so I don't know what's going on here, but now you need to pass a permission no matter what. So let's pass that. And you can see here we're getting Hello Dan back printed out to the console as we'd expect, because that's what we wrote here. We can try it with a bunch of different names. Alice gets returned. Bob, we could do Bob. If we try another action, that's going to fail. Like, let's try the by action that we would have written before. Let's saying action exception. That action doesn't exist. You can't do that. One more thing that they show you in the tutorials, and I think this is a good thing to know about, is you can require, again, this is in the EOSIO lib, is this require auth function, and what this does is it requires the transaction be signed by whoever you pass in here. So in this case, we're passing in the account name of the user that we're wanting to say hi to, but we're requiring that they have authorization, that they've signed the transaction before we do that. So if we run contract again, and again, we have this updated smart contract. Oh, that's, again, as we talked about in the blockchain section of the course, that's a very interesting point, is the fact that we can overwrite the smart contract. We can overwrite the smart contract to exactly the same address as we had it before. It's, again, they're trying to get away from that code is law kind of attitude, right? I didn't need to respin up Node.js. I didn't need to do anything else. Literally, all I needed to do was, whatever that last step in contract is. All I need to do is set contract. I don't need to do anything else. Once I have a new version of the software, I don't need to do anything else. Now, the question that comes up often in the Telegram is like, well, can't a hacker or malicious actor, they can upload one let's say I'm doing an ICO, I need to upload some smart contract for that ICO, and I decide like, oh, after 2 days I get enough money, I'll just take the money and run. So I'll re-upload a new smart contract that doesn't do anything, and then all the EOS that I got, goes to me, and I sail off into the sunset. There are ways of setting like time delays on your smart contracts that say like, oh, it can only be updated, after a year or after a month, or different parameters like this. So those can also be publicly looked at. So it's like if I'm doing an ICO and let's say the ICO ends in a month or something, well, I want somebody to add like some sort of permissions that at least like the smart contract isn't going to change until a month or something like that, you know. Anyway, back to the video. Sorry, I got a little carried away there, just because I think, you know, that gets asked quite frequently. So if we now try and push this action high to Alice with the EOSIO permissions, it actually will fail, and that's because it's expecting the authorization of the user that we're passing in. So in this case, if we did something like hello, and then hello, we can actually execute it again. We could also do EOSIO as well, and now we can say hi to both of these. But again, if we tried to do something like EOS, it's going to complain that we don't have the required permissions, because again, we're signing the transaction here by passing this -p flag, and if this doesn't match who we're trying to say hi to, the contract won't let you execute the action. Okay, one final thing in this video that I forgot I was going to discuss is this ABI. So by putting that annotation above, we were actually able to generate this ABI, and you can see here, like, since we didn't carry over the recording contracts from the contracts, the actual EOS/contracts directory, we have nothing in the recording contracts or the recording clauses, which is, you know, kind of bad actually. Here's where our actions are actually defined here, right? So it has a name hi, type hi, and then structs up here. We have a name type, a name user, things like that. I've often heard, like, so I haven't actually deep dived myself into like creating one of these ABI myself. I know there's documentation somewhere, or at least there used to be documentation somewhere that like kind of walked you through how to create your own ABI. I now that the, you know, annotation exists, I typically just tend to use that and don't do anything else. But I've heard people in the Telegram, like, if they're trying to do something a little bit more advanced in a smart contract, it's very, very useful to know how to edit these ABI by hand and then not generate them, because I think sometimes some wonky stuff will happen with that ABI generator. Like, it doesn't always function 100% the way you would expect, the way you'd expect it to. Okay, so that's essentially hello world of EOS. We'll continue the course in the next video. I'll see you then.